Thank you, gentlemen. You know, we talked about which of the two constants, Fiora or Veigar, should KT try and deal with against KOO. We decided Veigar. They took our advice. I'm starting to think maybe it should be Fiora.
Yeah, and the composition that KT ran, I mean, you could see how stunned they were at the loss because in the way that these teams are structured, usually it's a coaching staff that has a lot of say into what is picked. They must feel so bad knowing that they were just dealt a worse hand with this composition that lacks so much damage and just has poor lanes. The strategy seems to just revolve around Arrow being able to be that one guy carry, but Arrow is not playing at the level that he should be playing to actually pull off a one-threat composition.
It's like, I feel I have this problem when people say that a composition has too low damage. Sure, on paper, it might look like it has too low damage, but the main issue with it is that they were losing every single lane matchup. In this particular game, they have the Kalista, Alistar versus the Shen and the Ashe. Ashe is considered good into Kalista, but they should be able to work with this lane more because obviously in a scenario where they are behind, which they were, is going to look very weak. They're not going to be able to finish off targets. But if you create the composition based off of the idea that you're going to end up behind, then it's wrong to begin with. So saying a composition has too low damage, I feel it's wrong.
I'm going to disagree heavily because how do you kill somebody, Victor, once he gets the Q shield, the Shen shield, the Fiora heal? Do you actually have any source of damage besides Kalista Ren to actually finish it off with a Cinder Hulk Rek'Sai, with a tank top laner, and with no ignites on your team? You have exhaust and TP in the mid lane. Lulu is a support carry that only really becomes a high damage hyper threat once she reaches a Lich Bane status with 6 items.
Back to Yamato, then to Zyrene.
It's like, I understand the sentiment. Of course, if you fall behind or go into 6-item situation or a situation where there's items at all, of course, the damage is going to lack. That's what I agree, of course. But in scenarios where they play on the strengths that they have, which they didn't really have, simply because they picked matchups where they are weaker. Top lane, they were weaker in the matchup. Bot lane, it seemed they were weaker in the matchup as well. That is the fundamental issue for me, not the fact that they are going to lack damage in the later parts of the game.
All right, third-party opinion?
So I do think that this composition lacks a lot of damage across the board, lanes and in team fights, especially because you're looking at Kalista, right? Your main source of damage on this team, main source of damage here is Rend. You're against a Fiora that's going to have so much speed when they're casting the ultimate around somebody or the Kalista himself. You have to Rend immediately to try and stop that Fiora from getting in on you, and then your damage is pretty much nil. You're not a crit AD carry. You're going to be kiting backwards as much as possible, and the rest of the composition doesn't really back you up with anything besides more durability. This composition has low damage, but its goal is kind of to negate some of the damage coming out of the other team and soak it with the Malphite and the Lulu.
We saw some shot of KOO there, getting their strategies in order for Game 4 here. Want to come back to you, Yamato, and give you another chance to respond.
It is like, once again, like, of course, I agree that in the fashion that KOO Tigers won the draft. But I still feel there was potential to play around the bot lane, and around 10 minutes to 15 minutes, that's where they are strong around the Drakes. That is where I saw the opportunity for KT, but they didn't seize it. So, of course, KOO is going to be stronger as the game progresses.
Now I kind of want to look at 2 examples of how these teams played their compositions. The first one, 19 minutes, a successful fight for KT, fantastic Malphite engage, and all of the follow-up.
Yeah, there's actually a problem with this because when you talk about there's 10-minute fight, 15-minute fight that they should be taking, this is a 19-minute fight that actually comes out on top, but they don't get enough for it to actually accelerate them into the later parts of the game because it's 19 minutes. They'll take this fight, but it's a 3-for-0, but they can't get a Baron afterwards. That's the big thing after this, is that they win the fight, but then it's like, well, we didn't actually get enough, even though it's a great ultimate. 3 people, you get Koro's flash, and then Peekaboo comes in, he gets 4 people and headbutts Kuro back into the fight, exhausts him, so even his retaliation is low. At this point, this is not the Fiora being aggressive, this is this team being aggressive, picking them out. They don't have good mana, but you don't get enough off of it. That's the big thing, is you are just throwing too much at it just to even it up again because you had losing lanes.
Yeah.
So this was kind of like the, let's get back to even, but then it's still the compositional differences.
I think it's also like a question of phrasing. I just dislike the phrase having too low damage because I think it's too simplified. Because in reality, to me, the issue was that they have 2 weak lanes and had nothing to play on.
Wow. And 2, to your point about not having anything to take off the backside of that, had the fight been 50 seconds later and the Baron were up, it's quite possible that they could have gotten a bit more off of it. Want to jump into the second fight that we have now, 27 minutes into the game. This one goes in favor of KOO. Again, KT looking for an engage, looking for that proper engage, but the Fiora coming up pretty big against Arrow.
I mean, this one is just absolutely terrible for on KT's end. You can roll the clip, and they're just trying to do the dragon right now, but Malphite is coming in at just a weird angle here, and it only hits the Victor. Now, the fight gets split up into a way that either you funnel all your resources into the Victor and the Ashe, or you just leave. But they try to kite backwards, and this is what we were talking about, how Fiora is very good into the Kalista because her dash is on such a short cooldown that the kiting, it might seem at first that's actually very good against Kalista, but she just catches up way too quickly, does too much damage, the Vital Slow too powerful, and to me this is what is highlighting the whole not enough burst to instantly follow up, which I think is what causes the indecisiveness of do you follow up instantly on the Victor, because the only follow-up you have on the Malphite ulti with the Victor is Kalista, who, again, not a crit AD carry, so she doesn't deal enough damage to just burst somebody. Doesn't have a rocket like Jinx to follow up or a heavy damage spell. And that's the problem with the composition, that it really just needs to be really clumped up, and you can only go for multiple targets, such as we saw in the previous replay where if Kalista were to have a Runaan's Hurricane, she can actually start dealing some more AoE DPS and try to nullify the fact that there's only one threat on the team.
Final thoughts, Yamato?
It's like at this point already, Smeg was very, very strong. But the issue I saw in this team fight was Score use his tunnel thing to get into the Drake pit. He couldn't follow up on the Malphite ult. And the thing is, with a composition like this, you need to be a death ball. They were split up. You saw Alistar Malphite trying to get in, trying to create something, which is not possible. And Smeb just ended up dominating the Lulu and the Kalista, of course. And they need to be kind of grouped up. But, of course, I see your point with the drafting.
Some compositional errors, maybe some executional errors, definitely some things that they need to fix looking forward if they're going to keep themselves in this series. We'll see if KOO Tigers can lock in their semifinal berth with Game 4 against KT Rolster. The action out of London continues in just a few minutes.
We are all tied up right now as we get on to Summoner's Rift for game number 3, but no follow-up there. Oh, never mind. Unstoppable force. For Sunday, another nice knockup comes in. Too much damage. There we go. Arrow gets hit by the Ashe. Arrow backs away. Chaos Storm does a lot of damage, and Kuro with the kill there. Big heal for KOO Tigers, and they will chase KT over the moment. Arrow hopping away for his own safety. There we go, a nice big engage again. KOO Tigers 1 win away from the semifinals. GG.